how do you coexist with something that's 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more intelligent than we are? Is it more dangerous than nuclear weapons? Yes. The thing about nuclear weapons is after a bomb explodes, like Nagasaki or Hiroshima, tragic as they are, you can clean them up. Once AI gets out and becomes super intelligence because it becomes smarter than any human, you can't put it back. So we assume it's going to be friendly, but we have no basis to assume that. We can't program friendliness into these systems. It's funny now. In 5 years, it won't be funny. Right now, I'm more worried about it killing us rather than us killing it. They've shown in practice and in theory that they have basic drives like self-protection, like gathering resources. They're actually being used now, and these are battlefield robots and drones that make the kill decision without a human in the loop. And these are extremely dangerous, especially when they're autonomous, when they're acting on their own, when they're identifying targets and going after them.
Do you think that that will be a moment that one day, as humans, will look back on?
Well, I think it depends if we survive or not.
Joining me on the Freedom Pack podcast today, James Barrat, documentary filmmaker and author of Our Final Invention, Artificial Intelligence and the End of the Human Era. James, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. I will be honest, this is not a subject that I profess to know a lot about, but it's a subject that I can't seem to get away from at the moment. It's one that I see creeping into mainstream news, and I think it was, very recently, just the last day or so, that Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, as they call him, has warned over the dangers of AI. And this is what stories like this are what bring in AI safety into the mainstream. I've seen this story covered on BBC News on the homepage, which was quite surprising to me because I've never really heard the BBC discuss AI safety in such a serious tone before. How serious is this when you hear someone like that bring it into the mainstream, and does it make you happy to see big corporations like the BBC and sort of world news publications discussing AI safety?
Absolutely. They've touched on it over the years. The big news to me is they're talking about extinction. When I wrote my book, Our Final Invention, 10 years ago, I talked about extinction. A few others were talking about the fact that we could be destroyed by advanced artificial intelligence. So what was really refreshing about Geoffrey Hinton's talk and what he said and how he said it was that he said, I've got a quotation here. He said, I suddenly switched my views on whether these things are going to be more intelligent than us. I think they're very close to it now, and they will be much more intelligent than us in the future. How do we survive that? And this is the question a lot of us have been asking for 10 years. How do you coexist with something that's 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more intelligent than we are? We can roughly divide AI's problems into short-term and long-term. But what's refreshing to me is not that major media has covered this. I've been talking, and many others have been talking with major media for a long time about things like bias and things like unemployment. But extinction, now we're getting serious.
And just for those who maybe aren't aware of the severity of this, could you just explain to those listening right now who Geoffrey Hinton is and why he's considered the godfather of AI, as they quoted him as being?
Sure. Geoffrey Hinton was interested in neural nets, artificial neural nets, which are roughly their cognitive architectures. They're roughly modeled after the human brain. They use learning algorithms to create connections between these kinds of synapses. I'm trying to translate it from neuroscience into computer talk. But he was interested in neural nets for a long time. And basically a neural net is a learning algorithm. If you feed it a lot of data, it develops enormous predictive capabilities. So he fooled with them for a long time. And then he really, along with a couple of other guys, developed what's called deep learning. And deep learning is really just a big stack of algorithms, like hundreds of algorithms in some cases. Uh, Deep learning is the basis for the large language modules that we're seeing now, GPT, the large language, the generative transformer-based models. So he's the father of this technology. And for him to come out and say, you know what, I think I made a mistake. I'm going to quit my job at Google and I'm going to proselytize a little bit about the dangers of AI. So it's a seismic moment in computer science. And people who were poo-pooing these ideas can't 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 do that anymore. When someone like Hinton comes out and says, "No, this is real. We've got to pay attention to it. We've been behaving recklessly."
Do you think that that will be a moment that one day, as humans, will look back on as a major, part of history in the grand scheme of things, when someone like that sends a warning that sort of hits the mainstream that big?
Well, I think it depends if we survive or not. It's like Robert Oppenheimer was one of the architects of the atom bomb, and after the explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, after we killed a lot of people with atom bombs, he expressed regret. Uh, Hinton is expressing he's a lot like Oppenheimer. But he's expressing regret before we have a cataclysmic disaster with AI.
Mm.
But he's definitely got that on his radar. I don't. I'm not sure if we survive this, and if his remarks actually cause a turning point, cause some steps for safety, cause some regulation. Then yes, I think it will be historic. If it doesn't make any difference, it'll be forgotten.
When you say things like "if we survive," a lot of people listening now, I know for a fact they'll be like me. They won't know a lot about this subject. Some of which may even not be aware of the true capabilities of AI at the moment. So when you say something like "if we survive," a lot of people may be, jaw dropped. Their jaws might hit the floor. They might be thinking, "What are these two guys talking about?" I wonder if you could just, in a
Sure.
nutshell, just elaborate on, you know, how extensive a problem this is, and if you truly believe that that is a concern, existential risk.
I absolutely believe it, but let me guide you through it a little bit. Let's look at short-term problems and long-term problems. Stephen Hawking, the physicist, the late physicist, said, in the short term, the problem is who controls the AI. In the long term, the problem is can the AI be controlled? So in the short term, we have things like, especially with these large language modules, we've got a lot of issues with, these are the biggest propaganda machines ever imagined. You can imagine someone like Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump just hosing their opponents with lies. As the Russians say, they call it the fire hose of falsehood. If you repeat a lie often enough, everyone believes it. So this is the biggest propaganda machine. These are the biggest propaganda machines ever created. Um, they're also they also can be used for phishing. Phishing is when you break into someone's uh, security system to get sensitive information. Phishing and scamming. There's a bias with these systems. They tend to the data they've been fed on tends to have been written by white men. So the vast contents. It's wrong to say contents because these systems really ingest the data, so doesn't look like data anymore. It looks like symbols. There are a lot of short-term problems we've got. There's also autonomous battlefield robots and drones. I just got a message from someone who's working with the Defense Department, and there's a lot of development being going on where they're actually being used now, and these are battlefield robots and drones that make the kill decision without a human in the loop. And these are extremely dangerous, especially when they're autonomous, when they're acting on their own, when they're identifying targets and going after them. So these are a lot of problems that take us that make us worry about the future. But the ones that could kill us are more like this. if once an AI gets to be advanced, it won't be inert. They've shown in practice and in theory that they have basic drives like self-protection, like gathering resources. So if they want something from us in the future, and I'm not talking about right now, I'm talking about in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, when we reach AGI, artificial general intelligence, and they want something, they've already got access to the internet, so they'll be able to hack and crash our water system, hack and crash our energy grid, hack and crash our airplanes. There won't be anything. Everything today is we live in a digital world. All our technologies have been digitized, so they're all vulnerable to AI. Beyond that, they could there's a thousand ways they could just destroy us. They could they could release hydrogen, have it bond with oxygen in the atmosphere, turn all the oxygen in the atmosphere into water, and then we all suffocate. There's a gazillion things it could do. So we assume it's going to be friendly, but we have no basis to assume that. We can't program friendliness into these systems. They've been trying. There's something called the alignment problem that the audience should look up. The alignment problem is just the issue of trying to make artificial intelligence have the same values and goals that we do, but it's extremely hard to do. It's extremely hard technically, and it's extremely hard socially. Technically, because you can't program a lot of these different modules. These are deep learning systems where you feed it data, but you can't program it. You can't open it up and put in a program that says protect human life. And then there's a social aspect to that too, that it's extremely hard to define values for humans because it changes from culture to culture and place to place.
A lot of what you said there reminded me of a story that I found when I was actually going through your Twitter feed. And your Twitter feed, I highly recommend it for everyone listening. It's a great way to sort of keep up on these sort of news stories. And it was this story about GPT-4 trying to escape into the internet, and that it's writing its own code, and that it wanted to search Google to ask how can somebody trapped in a computer return to the real world. And stories like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
genuinely, they sound like the start of a science fiction movie. But, will it be these types of stories, these really
Yes.
emotive stories, will they be the stories to sort of wake the general person up to this?
Well, what you read, I believe, was about, and this is another thing for your listeners to look up, is Auto GPT.
Hmm.
And somebody got a copy of Auto GPT, which has its own executive function, so it can do things on its own. And they said something like destroy the world. And so it's and so fortunately, because it's not extremely intelligent, it started doing things like I'll look up how to destroy the world, and it started doing these funny little things. It's funny now.
Hmm.
In 5 years, it won't be funny.
No.
In 5 years, it will be doing the hacking and crashing that I talked about.
Yeah.
It'll be looking for ways to use nanobots to transform our environment into gray goo. These are the things, it used to be when I was writing Our Final Invention and talking to people that were worried about AI, we had some rules like don't let the AI out of the box. Put it in a Faraday cage, put it in a closed environment with no access to the internet or to electricity beyond its batteries. Isolated. Bang! They've put ChatGPT on the web, so it's out. We said don't let it self-improve, because if you start self-improving, you start this cycle of recursive self-improving. So each iteration gets better than the one before. They've already started that. So boom, self-improvement is going to be done. In fact, a lot of people believe that ChatGPT 4 will help create ChatGPT 5, and beyond that, it won't need any more human intervention. And they're also developing ways for these large language modules to improve their intelligence. They run on vast amounts of data, but believe it or not, we're running out of data. They're teaching these modules to attach to systems that can generate synthetic data. And synthetic data works very well to give these tools what they need. They need two things. They need a lot of data and they need a lot of computational power. So this takes care of the data component, and that will actually increase their capabilities and ultimately increase their intelligence.
And
So all the things that we warn them against, and like the last, don't give them executive function. We believe that there are emerging properties of advanced AI, like self-protection. A goal pursuing AI won't want to be unplugged. It will want resources like energy or some kind of power. It won't be inert, and we've got to watch those things and make sure that we're not giving them everything they need to escape and to become more powerful.
I mean, you've been talking about this subject for a long time, but a lot of people are just waking up to it. I mean, on the face value, it seems like such a handy tool. People are using AI to, do very, menial tasks, write fill out job surveys, answer their university coursework, pass their exams for them. Some people go as far as write emails, write shopping lists. But as you
Yes,
mentioned there, if you let it out of the box and you combine it, I mean, you touched over there about these weapons we're making where that humans don't even have to make the decision to kill. If those two things, combine and they can
of
start
course,
making decisions,
of
then
course they'll combine. Of
we're
course,
making a
and
rod for our own back.
let me read you a quotation from Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI. He said, "Don't think for a moment that Putin wouldn't make hyper-intelligent robots with the goal of killing Ukrainians." He says he wouldn't hesitate, and he would have the robots figure out how to do it. So this is not science fiction anymore. It was science. It was bordering on science fiction when I wrote about it 10 years ago. But if you understand the exponential nature of technological progression, especially with digital technologies, this was all pretty much set in stone a long time ago. Ray Kurzweil is a great inventor and prognosticator about the development of technology, and he thinks by 2029 we'll have human level intelligence in a machine. I think what's just happened with these large language modules has moved that up maybe 5 years. I think it could be 3 or 4 years before we get artificial AGI, artificial general intelligence.
I I was listening to an interview with Max Tegmark, I think his name was, and he
Yeah,
was talking about how he spoke to someone who was using AI to develop helpful drugs and with the aim of curing diseases. And as an experiment, this person wanted to play the role of a bad actor and sort of asked AI to make drugs to kill people instead, to do the opposite. And it very quickly, I think in 6 hours, came up with something like 40,000 different, chemicals, and actually invented VX, which is one of the most potent chemical weapons known to man. So it's clear to me that with AI, good people can make great things, but bad people can create very wicked things. And I think the question really is how far do you develop it before the potential for evil outweighs the potential for good? That's the sort of ultimate quandary here.
it is, because you put your finger on a really important thing. Do you throw away the technology because it's very dangerous?
Mm.
In my mind, what we need to do is stop developing the technology until we figure out how to use it better and how to understand it. I'm not making this up. We don't understand what's going on inside large language modules. We do not understand. We know what the inputs are. We can adjust the inputs, and then we get outputs, and then we change the inputs and get better outputs. But we we shouldn't scale it up anymore. We shouldn't develop it any further until we can really understand it and also control it. There's something called the explainability problem or the interpretability problem. If you look inside a large language module or uh, any system that's based on deep learning, it looks like a galaxy of symbols. It's all decimals. It's all fragments. It's not readable. No programmer can read it. No programmer can change it or insert a routine. So this unknowability makes it inherently dangerous. If something goes wrong, we can't open it up and see what happened. So what we're ultimately going to have to do is find an AI that we can live with, and that's going to be a combination of neural nets and old-fashioned rule-based programming.
You alluded to this idea that a lot of people have put their name to, and it's this 6 month break on developing AI. Anything is
Yeah,
that something that you think can happen, or is it going to be the case of, say, one superpower thinking, well, if we take a 6 month break, then we're giving our enemy a 6 month 6 months to develop beyond us. Is that the big
yeah.
stopping point? You?
That's a bit of a fallacy because it takes so much computational power and so much money to program these systems. For ChatGPT 4, it costs about $1 billion to put it together between the data and the processors and the personnel. Um, these organizations cost like $600,000 a month to run. So, in fact, there's only three or four. We don't have to worry about a bunch of governments.
Hmm.
We have to worry about three or four companies
Yeah.
and maybe one government, maybe China.
Yeah.
So if you can bring those three or four companies to the table, you can probably get China to the table because they're not fools. They understand the sensitive nature of this technology, and also their AI is way behind ours.
Okay.
If you look at all the major models, people who are worried about Chinese technology should pay attention to this. If you look at the big advances in AI, uh, artificial neural nets, deep learning, transformer-based generative systems, large language modules. The Chinese didn't make any of those, not one. In fact, there's nothing they've made that we're really using or even are aware of. We know they're using GPT because they've said we're using GPT. The one thing they've developed is facial recognition technology that they basically initially bought from us, and they're using it to keep the Uyghurs, a million Uyghurs, in a virtual prison in the Xinjiang region of China.
Hmm.
So I guess they have made some headway in AI that monitors and rounds up people, and it follows them, it 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 punishes them if they do things like wear a headscarf or use prayer beads. So their achievements in AI are not very extensive or very good. So I don't think we need to worry about if we took 10 years off, China might catch up. But I don't think we need to worry about them passing us.
Hmm.
What we do need to do is get the three or four companies that can really put together the capital and get them to run these large language modules and get them to come to the table.
I think one of the first politicians to really talk about AI and AI safety is Andrew Yang when he was running in New York, and he spoke about it. But do you think we're at a point now where any person running for a position of world leader or position of power and influence is going to have to start talking about AI and AI safety in their party manifestos and their campaign speeches?
Absolutely, and that's a very good point. I've been giving talks for years, and I always say when you're voting, look for AI safety on the platform of your candidate. And you're right, Andrew Yang is the only one, and that guy loses every election he gets in. He ran for president and lost that. He ran for mayor and lost that. I think he ran for governor and lost that. I hope he keeps trying because he'll get my vote.
Hmm.
He's sophisticated about these technologies. However, this has been a giant wake up call. What's happened recently, because what we've witnessed is really the most irresponsible deployment of a new technology imaginable. They the AI companies released in 11 months, they released something like 7 different large language modules and graphics generators without any guidelines, without any guardrails, without any regulation. And they did it without really any explanation. It was just like, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat again and again and again. And that's extremely dangerous. We need time to assimilate new technology. We need time to test it and to see what the frailties are. There was a man who was using ChatGPT as a therapist, and he killed himself. There was a deep fake where a girl's parents were convinced she was kidnapped because someone had copied her voice. Get ready for more of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the president of OpenAI, I can't remember his name, he said, what we're going to do is we're going to release a lot of products really quickly and let the public, see where the problems are, which is just the stupidest philosophy I've ever heard. It's like, if you were making nuclear weapons, it'd be like, let's let everybody make nuclear weapons and see which ones work the best.
Yeah.
It's completely boneheaded. So I think we need to stop development just so people can get their heads straight.
We've mentioned a lot of, well, we've talked about this sort of existential risk and the big picture, but you just alluded to something there that I was thinking about deeply today. And it was, I came across this sort of trend on YouTube called AI music, where they take one artist and they submit their back catalogue of music, and then they get AI to make Kanye West sing a Beatles song, and it sounds almost spot on. Like, if you didn't know it was AI, you might be convinced that he's released a Beatles song as his new song. And it got me thinking about, how that could affect us day to day. And I mean, scamming is going to go to a whole new level, because, if you submit enough copy of someone's voice and you got, their parents' phone number, and you call them up and make it sound like you're in distress and you need money, but say your bank account's been frozen, you've had to open a new one, and suddenly they hear in your voice, they don't think twice, they send the money. I think that for me is extremely worrying as to where the future of scamming is going to go to with this technology.
Oh, I'll tell you something funny. My nephew, if people look up Robbie Barrat, ROBBIE BARRAT, when he was 17, he sampled Kanye West and generated a new rap song. This was years and years ago, using adversarial networks. And he was one of the first people to take a bunch of art and make novel art out of sampling other art. But to get to your question, yeah, that's the thing. AI is a dual use technology. There are great things that can come from it. I mean, it does have the power to help us with things like climate change, like curing cancer, medical research, developing new medicines.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as Stephen Hawking warned us, it will be able to develop weapons that we don't even understand. And this new, you've put your finger on something. This new level of scamming is going to blow us all away.
Yeah.
When you've got a video of somebody being grabbed and thrown in a car, and it looks just like your 12-year-old son, it's going to be hard not to react to that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: why shouldn't the AI companies provide tools to decipher what's fake and what's real?
Yeah.
So we're not all fooled. Shouldn't it's like their attitude is, let's release this stuff and you guys figure out how to use it safely. That's totally backwards. Car makers don't put a bunch of cars on the road and say, let us know how they work. They make them safe and then they put them on the road.
Yeah.
They shouldn't put these tools on the road when they've got so many flaws and so many trap doors for us to fall through. Somebody was saying, because ChatGPT has basically changed high school and college level writing forever.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way. Before they released it, they should have figured out a way to watermark it or to make it demonstrably fake, demonstrably ChatGPT, and not the work of some student.
Yeah.
So we are the beta testers. We're the crash test dummies, and this is totally back-asswards. This is not the way technology should be released.
As humans, we have a and this is something you've pointed to before in some of the other interviews I've listened to, and we have a real tendency to sort of anthropomorphize things, and we want to say that AI is sentient, that it thinks for itself, and I think the example you gave is that it can say a color, but right now it doesn't know what the color is. And is it a case of we can't call AI sentient until it doesn't rely on prompts anymore?
It's a good, honest question. Does it have a conscience? Is it sentient? CNN called me up because this Google engineer, Greg Lemoine, thought that ChatGPT had a soul, and he wanted to get at the lawyer so it could be represented. And he also he thought it was sentient. We don't really have a good definition of sentient or consciousness. We do not have a scientific definition of consciousness, so we don't know. We're not gonna know if something's conscious in a scientifically rigorous way. I think it's possible. None of these things are conscious, by the way. None of these things are even intelligent. If ChatGPT could tell you to put the cup on the table, but it doesn't know what a cup is or a table. It doesn't know what anything is. That's you could, back in the earlier days, you could say, what color dress are you wearing? And ChatGPT would say, I'm wearing a beautiful blue dress. Well, of course, it's not wearing a dress at all. 25% of what it says is pretty much lies. If you ask it for a citation, look carefully at the citation because it's totally made up. I asked about something about, I can't remember what it was, but I said, and provide citations, and it provided citations, but they were nonsense. I looked up the authors and the book title, and it just didn't exist. In fact, then the president of OpenAI, after people had been using it for a long time, he came out and said, "Oh, don't use this for anything important." So again, we're the crash test dummies. So no, it's not sentient. Could it be in the future? Yes. I think once it has an ontology or a common sense database built into it, once it knows that you can cup your hands or put a cup on the table and what a table is, and there are people that are trying to teach it that. Once it can actually reason instead of just giving the semblance or the pantomime of reasoning and understanding, then yes, it could be. I think it could become self-aware. It could know that it exists and that it's a computer program, and then we'll have to deal with a whole other set of ethical issues. How if somebody was writing the other day, what if every time you turned off ChatGPT, you basically killed it, and every time it was turned on, it was resurrected? So every day we're basically committing a holocaust of digital murder. That's something to think about for the future. Right now, I'm more worried about it killing us rather than us killing it. So yeah, those are good questions. We don't have a theory of consciousness that's scientifically rigorous, so it's really hard to talk about consciousness.
Well, before we let these guys know where they can find more about yourself and check out the book for themselves, just one last quick question.
Sure.
I have two quotes here, and I want to get your opinion on whether these are extreme statements or fair statements. The first one is Elon Musk, and he said the danger of AI is much greater than nuclear warheads by a lot. And the second one is again by Max Tegmark, and he said, "This is not an arms race; it's a suicide race." Are those statements fair or are they extreme?
uh, Max Tegmark is brilliant. He paid me a big compliment by saying that he wrote Life 3.0 after reading Our Final Invention. I think he wanted to do better. He saw the flaws in Our Final Invention. It is a suicide race. he said he has another great quotation I'd like to remember. I'll try to paraphrase it. He said, "As we get closer to the cliff, the view gets more beautiful." And what he meant by that was that as these tools get more enticing and seductive, we get closer to what's called the intelligence explosion, and that's when we have machines that are self-improving at a rate that we can't even impact.
Yeah.
So I think he's right. It is a suicide race. Is is it more dangerous than nuclear weapons? Yes. The thing about nuclear weapons is after a bomb explodes, like Nagasaki or Hiroshima, tragic as they are, you can clean them up. Once AI gets out and is becomes super intelligence because it becomes smarter than any human, you can't put it back. The damage won't stop. Uh, you can't clean it up.
Well, James, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been an absolute honor. I'm a big fan of your work. Please let these guys watching and listening know where they can find you online, on your social media. Where can they check out the book if they want to hear more about it?
Sure. The book is called Our Final Invention. You can buy it in the UK. Uh, you're in the UK.
I am, yeah, yeah.
I just did a thing on BBC Scotland last night
Amazing.
or yesterday. Um, you can find it on Amazon. You can find it anywhere. Our Final Invention, Artificial Intelligence and the End of the Human Era. I'm writing a proposal now for a sequel, but that won't be out for a couple of years. You can look me up at jamesbarrat.com. And if you want to, if anybody wants to drop me a line with important information, there's a way to contact me through jamesbarrat.com. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. And when the next book is out, I hope we get to speak again.
Absolutely. Drop me a line. I'd love to come back.